I remember speaking of General Milley or Miley or however you say his name. Um, I remember
Thoroughly modern Millie.
I remember at one time he made a rational statement at one time, and they must have taken him behind the closed doors. And from that moment on, his the lunacy of his statements were so out in
Yeah,
the ether zone that you couldn't believe it. Because at first he was saying that, listen, we need to bring this conflict to a head and negotiate. And it seemed like as soon as he said that, the powers that be behind closed doors brought him in, and the next day he was singing a different tune.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, isn't that? I mean, even what I'm trying to say is that he, being the so-called Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the military, shouldn't he give pushback to those behind? If America's national security is in his interest and his number one priority, shouldn't he be willing to take the heat from his bosses to tell them, listen, they can outproduce us, they can outgun us. And even Obama said this, and I have a high disdain for him because of the policies he's
Right.
implemented. But even he said that Russia has escalatory dominance on the European continent, the Eurasian continent. So knowing that, and even I guess the new CIA director, I forget his name, he even wrote a piece
Bill
when he was the
Burns. Bill
ambassador.
Burns.
Yes, when he
Yeah,
was the ambassador to Russia, but net means net or something like that, meaning
yeah,
that
yeah,
he wrote a thing, an article, or a paper on that if America continues to push Russia vis-a-vis Ukraine, that it would wind up into a military confrontation, and
yeah.
Russia would not allow this to happen. I mean, knowing this, and why so much? Why are the leaders of America so out of touch with reality when they've had these things on their desks for so long?
But this is common throughout history, I guess is the best way to say it. We are not the first nation to be so self-absorbed in our own mythology that we refuse to step back and take an honest look and say, okay, where are we, and what do we need to do, or are we doing what we can do to be the best we are? With Millie, all I can suggest is that he's a coward. And by virtue of being a coward, I mean, he's not willing to risk his career to speak the truth. Instead, go along, get along, and then at the end, you get to go to Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or Northrop Grumman and get a nice office or a nice payday as a member of the board. So why jeopardize that? Uh, it's not just Millie. Let's look back over the last 20 years. You didn't have a single
Mm-hmm.
senior officer in the lead up to the war in Iraq in 2003 stand up and resign their commission and say, this is wrong. This is going to be a disaster. We shouldn't do it. Not one, because, well, they didn't want to risk their payday. They didn't want to risk their retirement. So that kind of courage is rare. It's rare. It exists once in a while, but the lesson that history teaches is that the people that stand up and try to speak the truth, they end up getting punished. I mean, I wrote a piece the other day saying, "Are you a Galileo?" You know, if you go back to Galileo and it was the 1500s initially and into the 1600s, it's just as America was being founded, or the colonies started rising here in what was in North America. Uh, Galileo had the audacity to insist that the Earth revolved around the sun, whereas the existing theology of the time, not just with the Catholic Church, but the conventional wisdom was, oh no, no, everything revolves around the Earth, which is sort of where the United States is right now. Everything revolves around us. It all goes around, and we're the center of attention. Uh, and so Galileo persisted with that and ended up being punished. He was sentenced to death. It was never carried out, but he was shunned. He was exiled. canceled, to put it in a modern parlance. Um, that's what we face today. Anybody that dares speak up and raise an alternative viewpoint, particularly with respect to what's going on in Ukraine and U.S. policy, uh, active efforts to cancel. We've seen the same with any comments regarding COVID and vaccines. If you've got the wrong point of view, you get canceled, you get shut up. Well, that doesn't prevent truth from ultimately coming out and prevailing, but it does mean that it sets the people up for destruction who are going through that kind of thing.